The night was darker than usual, with the street lights flickering as though they too were afraid of what lurked in the shadows. Two police officers, known in the district for their arrogance and abuse of power, drove slowly through the empty road, their eyes scanning for easy targets. They had grown accustomed to bullying the weak, believing their uniform was a shield that justified every action. That night, fate placed in their path a quiet man walking home with nothing more than a small grocery bag in each hand. He seemed ordinary, perhaps too ordinary, and to the officers, he was perfect prey. What they didn't know was that this man was the wrong person to mess it with, and the lesson awaiting them would be one they would never forget. The man's name was unknown, a simply-looking individual who worked at a local repair shop. BC's soft smile and calm demeanor made him appear harmless, a nobody in the eyes of those who judged the boy appearances. But beneath BC's modest exterior was a man who had endured pain, loss, and battles far beyond the imagination of those officers. Unknown had once served as a special forces soldier, carrying scars of war both visible and hidden. He had left the violence behind, seeking peace in the rhythm of ordinary life. Yet destiny has a way of pulling people back into the fire when they least expect it. That night, Unknown would be forced to face HAS past once again. The officers pulled their car to the curb and stepped out, their heavy boots echoing on the pavement. You. Stop right there. One of them barked with a smirk that carried no respect. Unknown paused, turned slightly, and gave a polite nod, unsure why he was being stopped. The officers surrounded him, their voices sharp and commanding. They accused him of a suspicious behavior, of hiding something, of crimes he had no part in. Unknown remained calm, trying to explain he was just heading home from work. But arrogance thrives on silence, and HAS calmness only provoked them further. What started as words soon turned into shoves. Unknown's patience was long, but not endless. BC's heart told him to walk away, to avoid trouble, but HAS instincts sensed the growing danger. The officers, hungry for dominance, tried to humiliate him, pushing him to the ground and kicking HAS back of groceries across the road. A carton of milk spilled, rolling under the police car, symbolic of the life they were trying to crush. Unknown clenched HAS fists but still held back. He had promised himself never to use HAS skills again unless there was no other choice. But when one of the officers struck him across the face with a baton, something inside him shifted. The worry he had buried for years began to reawaken. The pain on HAS cheek and what ignited him was the injustice. Memories of comrades who had fought for justice, who had died with honor, flooded HAS mind. These two officers wore the same uniform, but their actions disgraced everything IT stood for. Slowly, Unknown stood, which HAS no longer thought of a humble mechanic but of a man who knew exactly how to fight and survive. The officers lifted HAS defense, mistaking HAS silence for weakness. But in the silence, Unknown's mind was calculating, measuring distances, reading their body language, and waiting for the perfect moment. The first officer lunged with HAS baton, aiming for Unknown's ribs. In a fluid motion, Unknown caught the arm, twisted it, and sent the baton clattering to the ground. The officer screamed as HAS wrist bent at an unnatural angle. The second officer rushed in, but Unknown sidestepped, using HAS attacker's momentum to send him crashing into the car door. Years of discipline and training returned like a storm, controlled and precise. Within seconds, the balance of power had shifted. The officers, once predators, now found themselves staring into the eyes of the prey they had underestimated and realized he was a predator far more dangerous than they could ever be. Fear replaced arrogance as the officers stumbled back. "Who the hell are you?" one of them gasped, clutching HAS injured arm. Unknown didn't answer. HAS silence was louder than any words. Instead, he picked up HAS groceries, brushed the dust off HAS clothes, and prepared to walk away. But HAS heart told him this was not over. This man would continue to abuse others if he let them. He didn't want to fight, but he couldn't stand being either. He had to teach them a lesson they would carry for the rest of their lives. He turned back slowly, HAS voice combat heavy with authority. "You wear that uniform to protect, not to destroy. Tonight, you learn the meaning of respect." HAS words sliced deeper than any weapon. The officers, insulted and enraged, tried once more to overpower him, drawing their taser and baton in desperation. But Anand's reflexes were too sharp. With graceful precision, he disarmed their both, leaving their weapons useless on the ground. The scene looked less like a street fight and more like a demonstration of pure skill against untrained arrogance. By the end, both officers lay on the ground, gasping for air, their pride shattered into pieces. But Anand didn't stop with physical defeat. He wanted to lift them with a lesson etched into their conscience. He forced them to look around the empty street, to realize how small and powerless they truly were when stripped of their uniform. Power isn't in the badge, he said softly. It's in how you treat the powerless. The words lingered in the air like a haunting echo. For the first time, the officers felt the weight of their actions, not from punishment, but from shame. And shame, Anand knew, could change a man more than any wound. The night ended with silence. The officers limped back to their car, their arrogance drowned by humiliation. Anand continued his walk home, carrying only his groceries but also the burden of resurfaced memories. He wished he hadn't been forced to fight, but sometimes the world demands strength to correct injustice. What he didn't realize was that his actions that night would ripple through the community, sparking whispers of the mysterious man who humbled two corrupt officers. Stories of justice, of a hero in disguise, began to spread, inspiring courage in those who had long been silent. In the days that followed, the two officers tried to bury the incident. They reported nothing, too ashamed to admit being overpowered by a single man. But their behavior changed. Fear tempered their arrogance, and their treatment of people softened, if only out of fear of crossing another Anand. But change, even if born from fear, was still change. They started to feel the weight of their duty, realizing that their power could either protect or destroy lives. For the first time in years, they looked at themselves in the mirror and saw not heroes, but bullies. The realization hurt more than any wound Anand had given them.